You don't need a new strategy. You need leadership to understand your outcome. That's the same thing. It's said in a different way. It's don't fall in love with the solution because that's the strategy, right? Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And allergies continue to be a big problem for you. I snicker because, yeah, I'm allergic too, but not to the same things that you are. You get pollen. Pollen
Yep.
doesn't, it bothers me a little bit. Uh,
You
but
gotta get you down here. Try some of this desert pollen out. It's special. And actually, I don't even know if it's that special, if it's that intense, or if there's just so many different things at all the time. Because you don't have up there, you get pine trees, and when you get pine trees, Dad, all you get is pine pollen. Out here, I'm
yeah,
getting the
yellow.
Palo Verdes, I'm getting the acacias, I'm getting the grasses, I'm getting the cactus, probably everything.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think you could also add in there dust
Oh
because,
yeah,
yeah, the fine particles of dust that are floating around in the air down there, I'm sure do some wonders to the respiratory system.
yes, sir. I didn't know that wonders could be negative, but now I know that as well. If we're jumping ahead to what I learned.
Yeah, wonders can be wonderful, right? And wandering, all in how you pronounce it. I don't know which one that one might be, but you know, speaking of that, damn, I think yesterday it was 55, and right now here in my office it feels like it's 75. It's pretty warm in the office. I don't know what happened. Heater's kicking in or something.
Got to come
Uh,
down here, get acclimated down here. You go up there, you'll be nice and cool all summer.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And that's that part-time living that everybody loves to do, right?
Yes,
The
sir.
snowbirds, what's the other one? There's snowbirds, and then there's the other one. I can't think of what it's called. The other direction.
The opposite of a
Uh,
snowbird. I don't know. I always use the term reverse snowbird.
yeah, no, there's a term floating around there. Most people are snowbirds, by the way.
Mhm.
They buy them a place in Florida, or they get in their RV and they run south for the winter. Uh, but there's folks that live in your neck of the woods that come up this way. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
get out of the heat. So that part-time living is really what we wanted to talk about today because I think it's a funny play on words. Uh, because one of the services, there we go, that's a big word for me this morning. Apparently one of the services that we provide at Tribe and Purpose is Fractional COO. And as I was chatting with some folks this week about it and helping them understand how this service would help their business grow, I started laughing at myself because, well, why is it a fractional COO
Mhm.
and not a part-time COO? Or even funnier, why isn't it just a consultant? Right? Because I get pinged. Matter of fact, just before the show, I saw a note from a guy, and sorry, dude, I don't remember your name, and I'm not going to look it up while we're recording. But I got a note from a guy on LinkedIn that says, "Hey, I'm a fractional CFO and da 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 da, and I help coaches, the blah blah blah." Isn't that just a consultant, right?
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
or why aren't you just part time?
honestly, I think it's just a really good brand because consultant, dirty word. That's, I mean, you know better than me because that's a little bit before my time. By the time I came into business, consultant was already a dirty word. But we don't want to be a consultant. That kind of extra, they come in and consultants have the very like this is my way or the highway. Come in and point at the problem, all that kind of reputation. So I don't know if I'd want a consultant. And part time, it's like, oh, I'm bringing you all the way into my business. I think that starts to get spinning of like you want to go full time at some point. All those kind of things get conjured up a little bit. And then I think the last piece here, the branding magic there, not that we came up with the term fractional, but whoever started it, the branding magic there, is it just sounds freaking cool. Fractional. That's a good word. That's a powerful word, right? And I think the other aspect there, and this is the key. I don't know if people know this when they are looking to hire a fractional COO, CFO, whatever it is. But the other really big key there, the advantage that I've learned from our own work, fractional COO businesses, and then also some folks we've had on the podcast that work as fractional CMO, CFO, CTOs. Austria, I know you talked about Austria yesterday. Yeah, but there's this really interesting thing where, because it is a fractional position, what you're getting is not just the part-time, but you're getting a little bit from each of those other businesses. And I think that's the really interesting thing. If you picture, and sorry, Dad, I know 2 episodes ago we talked all about the 40-hour work week and how we want to move away from that. I'm still using it as my favorite reference in this conversation. But if you take a 40-hour work week for a COO and you break that down, let's say that you're working in 4 different businesses 10 hours a week, right, as a fractional COO for 4 different businesses. Each one of those businesses gets that extra, not necessarily full-on synergy, but they get the extra insights and operational insights from how those other businesses are doing it. Because that's the beauty there. When you work in one business, when you work with one team all the time, you get locked in with that team. And there's bonuses to that, don't get me wrong. You can really develop a team like that. But outside perspective is really powerful. And that's where fractional COOs, fractional CTOs, fractional all the C's, that's where they really come in, is they help to provide a lot of that extra perspective from different teams. I know when we talked with Austria, that's one of the things he talked about, is he's working with these 2 completely different kinds of tech firms, and he could go in and say, look what they're doing with this app, and that piece of technology makes sense to plug in with your widget, and can kind of plug those things all together. And like I said, it's not really a full-on synergy, because it's not like you're going into business together, but you get a look inside. You get a look inside of their business a little bit.
Well, and I think that's a unique perspective. The other thing that I've learned over the years, working with C-suite executives, if you will, is what they want to do. And I found this much more. It's much more prevalent right now with CFOs, and what the CEO desires. And I'll give a shout out to my buddy Ed Haywood at Lucos, because Ed and I talked about this, probably 8 years ago.
Does Ed know he helped me write my first business plan? You got to tell him that sometime.
Yeah. No, I
second, third hand. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Family conversation there, folks.
Yeah. But what Ed was wanting to do, and saw the gap in capability in his business, even though he's quite the financial guy. He can crunch those numbers like no one else I know, but he didn't have the experience of a CFO that had been in $100 million business. And there's some differences. There's the startup world where the founder is wearing all the C-suite hats and all the director hats and the VP hats and the junior manager hat, is doing it all. Then you get in a couple $1 million in revenue, and then you're starting to build your team. You're not wearing quite as many hats, but you're still got your fingers in all of it. And then as your business grows and you hit that $10 million, I've found that the $10 million is this next tipping point. It's like, well, what do I want to do with the business? Because now at $10 million, I've got a lot of people on overhead. I've got a lot of production happening, whether it's services or products. I've got a lot of production. So I've got things coming in and going out, accounts receivable, accounts payable. I got to manage my capital. The next big step is where you really start to have to really start tweaking things and understanding things to set you up for growth. And that's where fractional COO that we do, and also the CFO. And that's where, back to Lucos, and that's where they were. And he's like, well, I want to grow the business to 30 million in the next 5 years. I think it was pretty reserved. It wasn't really aggressive. Fairly reserved growth, truthfully, folks, 10 to 30 million. Once you cross that 10 million revenue threshold, getting to 30 million isn't that much more difficult. But what he was lacking was the understanding of, well, how do I look at things from a 30 million in revenue standard? And that's what these fractional part-time consultant, C-suite, whatever you want to call it, that's where they give you the advantage. So, to toot the tribe and purpose horn a little bit, that's where we come in as an operations expert that has seen and been part of business growth from 10 to 30 million, from 20 to 50 million. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do as a COO, is we take that, we help shape that operations focus. CFOs do the same thing because they know what, the right one, by the way. And matter of fact, another little sidebar, another client that I'm working with that, he's got some very, very large investors. The investors aren't large, but the capital that the investors are looking to inject into his business is significant in the, what is that, nine digits, 9-digit category. Well, if you've never dealt with that kind of cash flow, it ain't just adding zeros to your checkbook, folks. There's a lot of things going on, because there's a lot of other implications that you don't deal with at the $10 million mark, that you have to deal with at the $100 million mark or above that, because now you're getting into some different taxes, some different structures. And, I'm not just talking about, your payroll. You have to change payroll companies because now you have 75 people instead of 50 people. No, I'm talking about some other, like SEC, Security Exchange Commission type of regulations that start to come into play. And how do I manage that capital, that very, very large chunk of change? How do I manage that? Because it's different than the principles are the same. Don't get me wrong. The principles are the same, but the volume is so much larger that it puts things into a different category.
Yeah, and things start to, like, the business act just looks completely different at that level. It's like we joke all the time about, 2 episodes ago, I know we talked about it, but it's like there's economics and there's Walmart economics. Like, and it's like, that's a completely different game. It really is once you reach certain levels. And the power you get from fractional C-suite is that you get that perspective from that higher level. And what that perspective does for you is it helps you really, just like a mentor, is the thing I keep coming back to as an entrepreneur. Because you're able to see where you're going, see what it looks like to run a $100 million business. And then as you're building your business up, you can start building the systems and processes necessary to get up there. The difference there between the mentor and a fractional member of your C-suite is who is doing all that work. When a mentor tells you a really good idea, you have to go do all that stuff. You've got to go read the books. You've got to go become the expert in that field, or in my case, like I always talk about, or become the C+ student in that field, like most entrepreneurs, right? And dive in on it, but get it to that level so that you can try to make it scalable and you can be looking ahead in the business and all those really, really great things. But it still winds up coming back to you. And I think that's the two pieces. It's twofold pieces of risk there that a fractional C-suite member can come in and help to fix that. One, they're going to take on a big chunk of that workload as far as the specialty type things of scaling those systems and processes, and they're bringing that expertise. As an entrepreneur, wherever you're at in your business, there's a lot of risk that you're taking on as you grow. As the business grows, those decisions get riskier and riskier and riskier. The decisions get more and more expensive. I'll give you one personal example. Dad, you remember my first Verbia event, the Engage fundraiser, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know what we lost per ticket on that event? Have I told you?
No.
About $35 per person. If we had 1,000-person event, we would have never had a second event. We would have been out of business right there. The risk that I was taking, that me and Norman were taking, and because it was smaller, the risk wasn't as big. We messed up some numbers, we messed up some math, delivery rates, and all these kind of things that we wound up pushing up that per person cost, right? Everyone was tipping their pizza guys too much. No, I'm kidding. But there were these things that were unforeseen as come up in a business because it was our first event. And because of that, we were taking on that risk. I'm comfortable taking on that risk in a 50-person event, or well, I don't remember exactly how many people were at that event, but somewhere in the ballpark, the 25 to 50, remember for it. I took on that risk. When you are leveling up on that and you are now at a 1,000-person event, 10,000-person event, whatever that is, and do you still want to be the one taking on all of that risk for this area that you're the C+ student at? Or at that point, that's where you want to bring someone in who has that knowledge. How great would it have been for me to have a fractional C-suite member who has worked in event planning who came in and said, hey, by the way, these 5 things on your estimations are going to be wrong because we got them wrong. And we get them wrong all the time. And so what you need to do is you need to account for an extra 25% per ticket. That could have saved me a lot of money. Could have. And that's that perspective that you get from there. And then, so again, I think it goes back to, it's like, as you grow, the risk gets bigger and the risk of the failures keeps adding up and adding up and adding up because you don't have those systems and processes to function at that higher level. And that's where somebody coming in at a fractional C-suite level can help you to build up those systems and processes in a way that can get you to the point where you want to bring someone in full time to dive in on all that, be the expert there. But it gives you that halfway step where you're not just going to keep putting it all on yourself, putting it all on your team, absorbing all of that risk. This really helps you to mitigate it in a lot of ways. And I wish we would have known more fractional people back when I was doing my Verbi days. I'm starting to think now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll challenge that a little bit in the fact that the risk gets bigger, but you also have more opportunity to mitigate it. And here's what I mean. If I'm a large, let's say I'm running a $50 million in revenue event company, and that means I've got multiple events. And if I screw up one, it's not a death, a death wound.
Right.
It's damn, I fire that guy, that program manager probably. But in reality, because I'm a $50 million in revenue company, I can mitigate that risk, but I could also lose my shorts in a much bigger way too, because those kind of businesses still go bankrupt. Hell, Red Lobster, they were the largest seafood chain in the world.
Yep.
And they're filing for bankruptcy. They say, well, we're not closing it down, but they're filing for bankruptcy because they mismanaged. And the articles I've read on it blame it on the all-you-can-eat shrimp.
How fun is that, though? I was going to say, how fun is that as a thing to point to? Of like, we did all-you-can-eat shrimp, but people ate too much shrimp. It's not our fault.
Yeah, that's to me, that falls into that same category of Denny's. Remember the Denny's? All the Denny's in Colorado Springs closed. You know why they closed? The Denny's didn't, and the rest of the country didn't close. The Denny's in Colorado Springs closed because the person that was managing the restaurant corporation that owned those franchises here in Colorado Springs screwed up.
Yeah.
The business was great. I mean, every Denny's I ever went by, always, no matter what time of day or night it was, always had people in there paying, buying pancakes, buying coffee. And, that is poor management, poor leadership is what that boils down to. And that circles it back around to why do you need a fractional C-suite? Because they're the truth teller. When you're the founder, CEO, you've been drinking your own Kool-Aid a long time and you think your shit don't stink. And and I had this conversation with somebody just the other day. I can't remember who it was. But it was the fact that people who are idiots can still get lucky.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people there's a lot of people out there that are running businesses that are dumber than a rock, that have gotten lucky a couple of times because they put up the sign at the right time. You know, you still got to do some prep work, but that's life. I mean, I'll be frank with you about it. You know, there are people out there that it's like, you don't know how to do what, and you're running a $5 million business. How is that? And it's not even the people they surround themselves with, because they think they're still the smartest one in the room. And they got lucky on a couple of wins, and now they got a $5 million, $10 million, that's probably about the cap I would put it at, $10 million business, and they still think they're the smartest person in the room. And damn, but it's lucky. There are all, I don't care what anybody says. You got to put the work in, but life ain't fair. You can put the work in and grind it out and do all the steps, all the proper steps, and all the niche and all these sort of things, and then look across the street at Bubba, and Bubba's like, put the sign up, and people just started coming in. I don't know what I did, but people just started coming in, and I made a lot of money. Okay, well, I mean, shit.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing around business. It's I think that's always a piece of the interesting conversation, is how lucky just people can get, and failing upwards and all those kind of things. We've talked about this is more specific to I think a specific type of business, more like the stocks area and those kind of things. But it's like the risk aversity conversation we've had, where it's almost like you encourage people to take on risk, and then the person who happens to pick the right thing gets promoted, and then it keeps happening like that. And then you wind up with somebody who has no risk aversion at all running a company, and they make it fail because they don't have any risk aversion. Like, there's not necessarily much going on. There's also and I think this applies to entrepreneurs as well. I can't think of the name of the principle. You might be able to help me. I want to say it's like the Benson principle or something like that. Something like that. But it's the idea that people get promoted to a level where they fail. Because you are successful at this level, therefore you move up, and then you're eventually going to move up to a point where you're going to fail. We naturally get promoted up to a point where we're always going to fail. It's kind of this weird issue with promotion. But I think that happens with entrepreneurs too, is that it's like you can get lucky on some stuff, and you're going to because you're getting lucky, you're going to find success. That success is going to keep building up, and you're going to reach a point where that next layer of success is too much for you, and you're going to most likely fail or going to have issues inside of your business. And if you're somebody who is just getting lucky, going by the seat of your pants, just kind of really doing the on-the-fly entrepreneur thing, whether it's lucky or, you just doing it on the fly, because they can kind of look the same in that way. When you don't take the time to put in that extra effort to start to build those foundations for things, that's where things fall apart. And I think that's one of the keys I think about going back to what I was saying with like the risk and the growth and those kind of things. That's the thing. And you hinted at this. You're pushing back on what I was saying. I totally agree. You can also mitigate the risk when you're in a bigger business. That's what big businesses are really freaking good at. Does McDonald's sell hamburgers anymore, Dad? No, they're selling land, because they built a land business that sells hamburgers and French fries in a way that makes the land pay for itself a little bit while they're waiting for it to turn over and sell it again. Right? That is next level economics of looking at a giant business like that, to where you are no longer selling hamburgers, you're in the land business, right? You're in the real estate business. Now, does that mean that every business needs to go out there and get a CFO who's going to say, hey, what we really need to do is start buying land and develop cities and going through all that? Like, no, but you can learn how to start to mitigate things like that. And I think that's the really big key there. It's like we talk about it all the time on the show of like insurance for a business and those kind of things. The people who understand how those things work at a very high level can help to apply those ideas into lower level businesses and help you to set up those systems so you can prevent the risk or mitigate that risk and prevent those possible failures as you go forward there. But I think it goes back to what you were saying there of having the truth teller inside of your business. And I want to throw it to you then. What do you think, maybe it's somebody telling you the truth, maybe it's something different. What do you think is the scary thing, the barrier to getting somebody in your getting a fractional C-suite member?
I think it's you have to, the CEO, the founder has to be willing to admit that he's not the smartest dude. or that he doesn't have all the answers, because he's just spent the last 5 years, 10 years, everybody coming to him for, well, what do we do about this? What do we do about that? And as long as he's guessing, his answers is what has made the business successful, right? You know, at first you're only answering your own questions, and then you hire people, and then they're asking you questions, and you're answering them, and you're winning. And I was thinking about this also, because the difference, I would say, between a fractional COO and a consultant is a fractional COO is in the inner circle. That's different. A consultant is still on the periphery, kind of looking at things from the outside in. A fractional COO comes in, he's in your inner circle, because you have to have that trust in order, and that's part of it, is as the CEO, the founder, I have to be willing to open up my processes, develop a relationship with this individual, let them inside my inner circle of trust, and say, all right, how do we get better? And be willing to do that. I've never seen that happen with a consultant. I've only seen it, the way I've seen consultants used is, hey, we need to fix this problem. Find an expert who deals with that problem. And like a conflict resolution consultant comes in, says, all right, we're all going to get along now. And they sprinkle some conflict resolution dust over it, and everybody's happy, and we all get along. That's not inner circle shit, right? No. Inner circle shit is the guy's he's looking in the books. He's seeing the operations. He's talking to the people in the team. He's understanding what's the culture, what's going on in the culture of the organization. From the inside, as a new experienced person with different set of eyes, stepping inside and saying, well, what about this? Mm-hmm. Why is asking the why, a lot of whys, and going, all right. And not, here's the other thing I think is important. A consultant you're going to hire, and it's going to be fix it 30 days, right? A fractional COO is developing a relationship and coming in and saying, all right, let's analyze this. It's not telltale sweeping changes immediately. Depending on the business, yeah, there might be some need for it, depending on what's happening. But generally speaking, it's, all right, let's open it up. Let me see the inside, see what it looks like, see what's going on, and then start to analyze and discuss and see where the gaps are, see what the problem sets are, and make adjustments off of that based on the experience and understanding that the fractional COO or CFO, whatever, the fractional CXO brings to the table. I think that's what happens. That's the advantage of bringing that person in, that skill set in. That's different from bringing a consultant in, or hiring a part-timer to run a project.
I want to push back on something, because and this isn't bad. This is a good thing for me to push back on, because it's a bias that you have in what you were just talking about there, Dad, and in the way that these fractional CXOs, love that, much easier than listing out each one every time. But you're talking about their approach, and that's your approach, Dad. I don't think that's everybody's approach. There's plenty of people out there who call themselves fractional COOs who will come in and do the consultant thing, I'm sure. And they will come in and say it's my way or the highway. The tribe and purpose difference, and we talk about this is our rugby coaching philosophy. It's the way we see the world, all those kind of things. It's all about the why behind it. And I think that also, if you're somebody who's looking to hire whatever CXO, you're looking, fractional CXO, you're looking to bring into your company, that is one key difference there, is take the time to understand a little bit of their philosophy behind it. And whether it's a COO or what, if they just want to tell you what to do, they will have it all figured out, and they just want to pass it on to you and say, this is the way. Otis, I've helped 10 nine-figure, I'm using that because you said earlier, 10 nine-figure companies, and I did all this, I did this, and Otis, this is my secret, and there it is. You do these things. they don't know your business. They're just taking the thing that they figured out that worked and they pass it on. I talk about this all the time with my coaching with some of the cadets we're working with now. I talk about like the different types of things, and I always talk about the life coach, like Instagram guru type person, because a lot of people think that might be what we do. And the difference I always draw there is what those people do is they find one path that worked for them, and they say this is what you have to do. Same things a lot of consultants do, where they go, this works for me, and it's worked in 10 of the businesses I've worked with. Therefore, this is the answer. And what a really good member of the team would do, which is what you want out of a fractional C-suite member, is they're going to go in and they're going to take their understanding of the problem set and they're going to help to find a new solution. Going back to, I'm blanking on who it was that said this. It's one of my favorite quotes from our show. The fall in love with the problem, not the solution, right? Consultants and a lot of people who might just kind of fall into that bucket if I'm forcing them into that bucket, life coach, those kind of things. It's very much they're in love with the solution to the problem. They're not in love with the problem. You want to bring somebody in who will fall in love with the problem that your team is facing and help you find the solution rather than being in love with the solution and forcing your problem to fit their solution. I think that's a really key difference there. I wanted to call you out on that. I know it's not like a mean call out saying calling you out makes it sound bad, but it's like that's your way of looking at coaching. That's like me talking about rugby and saying like the maul is the most important part of the game. Well, yeah, to me it might be. That doesn't mean that to every coach that you need to focus on mauls entirely. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's my bias there as a coach. And so I think that's an important thing to think about. And as you go through this process, hey, if it's tribe and purpose, that's great. But any sort of hiring process of bringing, whether it's a full-time C-suite or somebody, fractional C-suite consultant, coach, mentor, life coach, whatever. I don't know, I'm throwing a lot of people out there. Making sure that they're willing to come in and fall in love with the problem, step into the inner circle, like you were saying, and actually dive in on it rather than just staying on the outside and kind of pointing at things. Because that's the last thing you want inside of your business.
Yeah, and I want to say that was Chris Roush, the No Excuses coach, but I don't know. I love giving him a shout out anyways.
He's great. And I don't know, my mind keeps going Green Beret. I don't think it was Scott Kinder. So we'll have to go through our list and go through all of our Green Brave. I'll go over
we'll have to go back and listen to all the shows again. We should be able to. Shouldn't one of them AI things do that for us? But I wanted to say you brought up a really good point, and I'm not going to mention the name of the organization or anything that might even allude to it. But I talked to a client of this organization, and that organization was doing exactly that. They would show up and say, here's the solution. Here's the 10 steps you need to be successful. Do these 10 steps. And they would pat themselves on the back. The executives that hired them would pat themselves on the back, and nothing would change because nobody truly ever understood the problem. And that is such a good point if you fall in love with the problem, not the solution, that's how you get the better answer. It reminds me of another way of explaining it. You don't need a new strategy. You need leadership to understand your outcome. That's the same thing. It's said in a different way. Don't fall in love with the solution because that's the strategy, right? Be willing to change the strategy to get to solve the problem.
Yep.
So,
and, sorry, I know I look like I had something to say there. It's because I have a lot to say, and I'm not going to go into it because I was about to go full on coaching strategy, talk some hockey and all those kind of tiptoe around that rabbit hole. Sorry, Dad. Go ahead. Also, wait, I was going to say I'm blanking on his name. EOS, the EOS guy. That's who it was. Hark. There he is. There we go. All right. Shout out to Hark.
Yeah, give our good buddy Hark Harold a shout. EOS in Denver, he is freaking crushing it, and I love what they're doing at EOS. Man, great program, great system. So if you're a small business, give our brother Hark a call. And what I learned today was I like that, and I was trying to figure out a counter to the get promoted to the point that you fail. And I think I was reflecting back on the military and the promotion system in the military, it's not really quite like that, but there is some, it's more of a, you get promoted until you decide you don't want to do it anymore, or the people that know you don't think you can do it anymore. It's rare. I try to think back in my own career, and there was probably some times where got promoted, moved into that new position, and yeah, you stumble and fail. But the great thing about the military is, generally speaking, you get a second chance to figure out, and as long as you don't do the same thing twice, dumbass, then it's going to be okay. So
And
that was what I learned today.
I think the leadership piece there is really key, though, because what you're talking about is somebody who above them is looking and saying, "Ooh, I'm not sure Camden has this skill set that we think he has." Because that's what that whole principle comes down to. Is it's like, well, Otis managed 100 people, let's give him 1,000, and it turns out Otis's max was 200. Like that's the kind of problem there. But a good leader should be able to recognize that. I think you're totally right there.
Yeah, and I'm restraining myself much like you did. Let's put put a pin on the wall to hold the promoting people like us. That's a discussion we need to have.
Yes,
on
sir.
Our next family episode. As you are my son.
Yes, sir. All right, scribbling that down. God, that's ugly handwriting when I write fast. What I learned today, Dad, was actually something I had a conversation with Norman last night. Our good friend Norman, our old producer, watches some basketball, having some wings, and he was talking about insurance companies and how it seems like such a scam, but then you hear that insurance companies go out of business. And he was like, how the hell do you go out of business in a business like that where you like get such free money? And so first we had a conversation about how it's not free money and, there is still a business plan and risk and all those kind of things that go into it. Talk about the math and estimates and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
But the other piece that I mentioned to him, and it's like, you have to keep in mind when you look at these giant companies, is sometimes you get bad leadership, you're way out of a cash cow. I could give you the golden goose, and if you are a terrible leader, you're gonna screw that up somehow. You're gonna kill the goose or something. Like you're gonna forget to feed. I don't know. To take that example,
that's the moral of the golden goose story, anyways, ain't it?
I'm gonna have to go back and read it, honestly.
The moral of it: you abuse something that has the opportunity to give you success.
Yeah,
and you don't care for it. That's the moral of it. Yeah.
Yep. The bad leadership, the jackass, the idiot, the lucky, whatever you want to call it, you could screw up any size business. And then you combine that in with whatever the name of that principle was we were talking about. When you see a giant company that failed and you're like, how the heck did that happen? There's a couple pieces that might be at play there.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And I want to say, if you're a small business that wants to succeed, wants to grow, wants to reach the next level, then give us a call at Tribe and Purpose. Go to 10xyourteam.net and set up an appointment with myself or Camden. One of the two of us will walk through some strategies and help you get that initial jump start to get your business growing to that next level of success. If you're happy where you are, good for you. You want to share some of those lessons to get to that point, go ahead, give us a call. Still want to talk to you. But if you're ready to grow, ready to execute that business to the next level of success and make a larger impact with your business, then give us a shout at 10xyourteam.net.
And
Camden.
I'll add one thing there. Because we talked about the other tools too. We were joking about the consultant coming in. Well, if you can't hire, if you don't have the budget to hire because you're an entrepreneur with a small team and you want that mentor type thing to somebody to come in and give you that outside perspective, check out the other episodes of the show, our DIY tool and all of the free excerpts from GBLP. You can DIY leadership inside of your business and you can do a lot. I just want to make sure I mention that because it does also take that legwork, which is the bonus of having a fractional COO is they get to do a lot of that legwork for you, right?
Awesome. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10x Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass on to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.